Structure chart, snakes and ladders. Now we're going to take a look at a structure chart outlining the game of snakes and ladders. So firstly, let's have a bit of an outline of what snakes and ladders is. It's a traditional board game where players roll a dice to traverse a pathway using a specific token. Along the pathway, there are a number of locations that connect with either snakes or ladders. When a player lands on a snake, their token descends the pathway, taking him closer back to the beginning of the game. When a player lands on a ladder, they ascend the ladder, taking him further ahead along the pathway within the game. The ultimate goal of this game is to be the first player to get their token to the end of the game and be declared the winner. So we're going to use a structure chart to not just illustrate how the game works, but kind of illustrate each of the individual players' turns. So the overall sub-program going on here is that of player turn. Now, the first thing a player does when it is their turn is they roll a dice, okay? And that dice roll is used to calculate the dice roll value. And essentially what happens after the dice roll value is calculated is it needs to be recorded. Now, as you can see there, I've actually used a control parameter, meaning that we can't go ahead until that value is recorded. So if we just think it from a traditional board game sense, it's like if I roll the dice and the dice fell off the table. Well, I can't go ahead in the game. Although the dice did roll, okay, it fell off the table and I don't have a number. Okay, so that's why I put it as a parameter. The dice roll must be recorded at this point. Now, the other thing the player does when it's their turn is they move their token. Okay, now as you can see here, I've said they need the dice roll value, okay, in order to move the token. But let's think like a program here and think, well, let's say I didn't roll the dice first, okay, my dice roll value would be 0. So what I'm going to do is actually put in another control parameter saying the dice roll value must be more than 0. Okay, that means I can't move my token unless the value is greater than 0, meaning that I have rolled the dice first. So I'm putting these control parameters in place essentially to control the flow of the game. Okay, and I hope you get that, not just in understanding this game, but in all your programs. Okay, so we are at the moving token point, and essentially this means the token's position changes. And when the position changes, I land on a new position which has a landing rule. Now, as the game states, the two main rules are that of snakes and ladders. A snake means move the token down the snake, okay, and a ladder means move the token up the ladder, going further ahead in the game. Okay, those two pretty self-explanatory, makes sense. What we need to look at is our third option here, okay, and that is that of the neutral spot. Okay, and that means the token stays in position. Now, it's important to emphasize the neutral spot because essentially, when a player lands on either a snake or a ladder, they move up the ladder or down the snake and it takes them to a neutral position. So they're actually moving between two different landing positions. So essentially this is a loop. Okay, it's a loop that will take at least or at most 2 turns. Okay, 2 movements of the actual token. Okay, because they land on the snake, they move down the snake, and then they land on a neutral spot. So essentially, the neutral spot signifies the end of the turn. Once a player lands on a neutral spot, they're not moving anymore. So really we need to highlight the importance of the neutral spot. And for that reason, as you can see, I put in the control parameter here that the token movement is completed only after they land on the neutral spot. Okay, and that will end the loop. Okay, so as I said, the loop will never go more than 2 times because I'll land on a snake, go down the snake, and then land on the neutral position, turns over. Okay, so the turn is completed. That means their movement is completed. My next control parameter comes up saying the turn is completed. They're not moving anymore. And essentially after that, it's the next player's turn. Okay, so that triggers all the other parameters going to the next player's turn. Now, there's only one other outcome I haven't highlighted, and that's essentially the one that shows the end of the game, and that is when the player lands on the goal. Okay, essentially they've won the game, and the control parameter is the game is completed. Okay, it could be a you win message or something like that. Okay, and so the game is over there. So I hope this this structure chart helps illustrate, how these actually work, then the symbols going on here. As you can see, all my blue boxes are processes. Okay, we've got my 2 different parameters there showing, obviously the white ones showing the flow of data and how the game progresses, but more importantly highlighting the use of these control parameters and how they have rules associated that will stop the flow of the game until those rules are met. Okay, so I hope this helps out in your understanding of actual structure charts.